All right, everybody. I'd like to get started. It's a great pleasure to see such a packed room. Reflects the excitement in this afternoon's proceedings. My name is Fiona Doyle, and I'm the Dean of the Graduate Division. And in that capacity, it's a huge pleasure to welcome It's supposed to be on. Okay, I've got a technology problem here. Is it working now? Okay, all right, okay. I don't know what the problem was. Because you can't hear any difference. This is for the live stream. I think that this packed room reflects the interest in the 2017 Berkeley Grad Slam competition. So the Grad Slam is a competition that was launched 2 years ago by the University of California system-wide president, Janet Napolitano. And it happens on each of the 10 UC campuses. The event aims to sharpen students' communication skills and provide an opportunity for the public to learn more about the research that our graduate students are actually engaged in. And we want to recognize and promote the importance of researchers actually communicating their work to a general audience, because while it's nice to do great research and have this appreciated in one's inner circle of scholarly specialization, it's equally important, maybe more so, to actually disseminate the results of one's research more broadly so that society at large understands why it is so important for us as a research university to be generating new knowledge. So the way that the competition works is as such. Every campus is asked to select its own, to have its own competition and select a single finalist who will then represent the campus at the UC-wide competition, which will be later in the month. So at Berkeley last month, a faculty subcommittee of the Graduate Council reviewed videos that were submitted in response to an invitation to compete by graduate students from a range of disciplines across the campus. And I'd really like to thank that committee, some of whom are here now, for their hard work in judging those submissions. The committee selected 8 semi-finalists, and these are the people from whom we'll hear today. The third, second, and first place winners from today's competition will receive awards of $750, $1,000, and $3,000 respectively. And then the first place winner goes on to represent us. The UC-wide competition is actually next month on May 4th in San Francisco at the LinkedIn headquarters. So the presentations today are going to be evaluated by a distinguished panel of judges. And I'd like the judges to stand as I introduce you. The first is Naila Nasir, who I think hasn't joined us yet. Oh, there she is. She is standing. So
come on down.
So Naila earned her BA in UC at Berkeley and her PhD from UCLA, so she's very well equipped to judge the winners for a UC-wide competition. She joined the Berkeley faculty in 2008, and she's a professor in the School of Education and the Department of African American Studies. Since 2016, she's also served as the second Vice Chancellor for Equity and Inclusion at Berkeley. Amy Slater. Here. Amy earned a BA from UC San Diego and a JD from UC Hastings School of Law. She's a lecturer on the subject of negotiations and conflict resolution in Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy and at UC Hastings. Before that, she worked in private practice and in corporate legal departments. She serves on the Board of Trustees of the World Affairs Council of Northern California. And we also have Caroline Winnett, who received her MBA from Berkeley in 1990 and then became an entrepreneur and angel investor. In 2015, she returned to Berkeley to become the executive director of Skydeck, a multidisciplinary accelerator program building the network to include 100 teams, more than 70 advisors, more than 300 active investors, and over 20 campus organization partnerships. So I'd like everybody to join me in thanking our judges for volunteering their time. Then, in addition to this panel of judges, this year we've introduced a new feature to the competition. So you as audience members will also be judges. You will be invited to select a People's Choice winner at the end of the competition, and we'll get to the details of that in a little bit. So now I'm very pleased to introduce you to Alexis Schusterman, who's a doctoral candidate in chemistry and a lab member of, I think that's pronounced, how's it pronounced? Is it Beacons?
Oh, Beacon, yeah.
Beacons, okay. The two is in a weird place for that, but anyway, she'll explain all of this. This is a Berkeley group that observes and follows, it stands for the Berkeley Atmospheric CO2 Observation Network. So Alexis won the 2015 Berkeley Grad competition, and she's kindly joined us to share her reflections on the value of the competition from her perspective 2 years later. So Alexis.
Thank you. Are we hearing me okay over the live stream in the room? I have one on. Is it a good one? Okay, great. Mic number 2, we're okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to the Graduate Division for having me here, and welcome to this year's contestants, and congratulations for being here today. I remember sitting in your seats, and I'm not that afraid of public speaking, but I was still so nervous. And I really wanted to listen to all of the talks that came before mine, but I just couldn't because I was just saying my talk over and over again in my head. So feel free to tune me out. I understand. I will not be offended. So instead, I will address the rest of you. And it's so great that this is our fullest crowd, I think, so far. So that's great. I was asked here today, as Dean Doyle said, to reflect on the value of the Grad Slam experience that I had 2 years ago. And if you were here last year, you heard a lot about all these great personal and professional development benefits that I was offered because of my participation in Grad Slam. I got to write blog posts about my work and have blog posts written about me. I got to attend science communication workshops and meet lots of amazing people in the field and present my research in even more new and exciting ways. But today, I don't want to talk so much about just how Grad Slam has benefited me personally or how Grad Slam will benefit all of you, but how events like Grad Slam will benefit people who aren't in this room as well. Because the cutting-edge research that you're going to hear about today could very well better lots of lives one day. And that day might be tomorrow, if it's a medical advancement that's ready for clinical trials. Or that day might be many decades in the future, if it's more basic theoretical research that we can't even imagine how we're going to apply yet. But importantly, that day will never come if no one hears about our research. And we are living today in an increasingly divisive and polarized time. And one of those divides is that between people who do research and the people who consume research and are impacted by research. And it can be really tempting as an academic to hide behind that division and pretend that it somehow preserves the neutrality of our status as researchers to be separated in this way. But I think there's a growing realization now more than ever that the cost of that complete neutrality can be irrelevance. And if we really want to remain relevant and trustworthy in the eyes of our fellow citizens, of our neighbors, of our friends, of our family, then we cannot allow the research that we do or the way that we do it to remain locked up in our ivory towers or our basement laboratories or our peer-reviewed literature. And breaking down those boundaries can be a daunting task, but I hope that as researchers, we realize that there is plenty of research on best practices to help guide us through the proper way of doing this. And social psychologists who study persuasion have been telling us for years that you cannot just present someone with a pile of facts and expect them to believe them, right? So we human beings are social creatures, and we really need narratives that contextualize these facts in the process of our unique social identities in order to internalize the facts. And that can be hard for us researchers to kind of grapple with because facts are our currency, but dynamic storytelling is really the investment that we must make in our future. And that is why events like Grad Slam are so great. And I realize I am preaching to the choir in a big way right now. I don't need to tell everyone in this room how awesome it is that events like Grad Slam give us this unique opportunity to practice communicating our work in this completely different way than the group meetings or conference presentations or thesis defenses that we are being groomed for. But what I do want to say today is that I hope the enthusiasm and momentum that's building in this full room doesn't end with today. And one of these contestants will move forward to the Grad Slam finals, but I hope that all of you, all 8 contestants and everyone else, can become our trusty boots on the ground and preach the value of cutting-edge research in the streets. And it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and it's going to be a little scary, and it might feel a little more like activism or advocacy than might traditionally be considered appropriate for someone in your role. But I hope that what you're seeing today is that you do not need to hide your passion for outreach like it's some shameful habit, right? So Grad Slam not only gives us a platform to practice our communication skills, but it also validates us for doing so, it normalizes us doing so, and it celebrates that we are doing so. So as you move forward out into this strange new world, the graduate division at UC Berkeley and at the UC system-wide has your back. And you, in these attempts to reach out, it's not a waste of your time and it's not a compromise of your integrity. It is a valuable pursuit. It is of value to our university and to our community. So contestants, I've been talking for a little more than 3 minutes, so hopefully you've had time to rehearse a couple times. My only request from you today is that when you are standing up here, you just take a moment, put aside your nerves, take a deep breath, and just feel really proud, both of yourself for being here and of the research that got you here. And with that, all there is to say is good luck and go Bears. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in a minute or so, we'll begin the presentations. I wanted everybody to understand the order of the speakers. In previous years, we've put the speakers on alphabetically. And this year, we decided that the people who are at the beginning of the alphabet always get called on first, and the people who are at the end always have to wait, and everybody feels like it's not fair. So this year, we randomized the order of presentations. So that's why you can't work out any order, or at least you shouldn't be able to work out any order. Otherwise, the random algorithm has some shortcomings. Each contestant, as you've heard, is going to have 3 minutes to present their research. And the judges will be using the same criteria that will be used in the Grad Slam competition at system-wide level to evaluate the presentations. And these are the intellectual significance, the appropriateness, the clarity, the organization, engagement, delivery, and the visuals. And points will be deducted for every 3 seconds that exceed 3 minutes. So that timing will be monitored very carefully. And then after each speaker, I'll spend a few minutes, fewer than 3, asking a few questions so that the judges can actually sort of collect their thoughts grade each contestant on those different criteria before we come to the next contestant. So we're doing the questioning after the presentation because, as Alexis said, the contestants are very nervous, and I don't want them to be to lose their stride asking questions just before they give their presentation. So that's why we're doing things that way. And then after all 8 presentations, you as audience members will be invited to mark the ballots that are part of your programs for the People's Choice selection. Our staff, graduate division staff, will then collect up your ballots and tally the results. Meanwhile, the judges will be deliberating privately while we enjoy refreshments for a few minutes, and we'll have the drum roll as the judges come back with their list of winners. So, without further ado, our first contestant is Spencer Frank, who is a 5th-year PhD student in mechanical engineering. Spencer.
Without your pancreas dosing insulin, you would die because you would not be able to convert glucose into energy. Unfortunately, in 2012, I was backpacking alone in Southeast Asia and my pancreas stopped working. I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic, and I now use an insulin pump. But this insulin pump does nothing automatically. Driven by this frustration, I'm developing an automated dosing algorithm for my PhD. The blue line is a healthy patient. Their pancreas precisely doses them with insulin. The red line is a diabetic patient. They inject insulin up to 10 to 20 times per day. However, they get the dose wrong very often. This is because getting the dose right is incredibly difficult because the dose literally changes hour to hour and depends on exercise, stress, and food type. And the complications of getting the dose wrong can be very, very severe. Everything from losing an eye or losing your eyesight to nasty amputations to seizure and even death. More vexing, injected insulin takes up to 30 minutes to reach the bloodstream. This means that you have to be able to predict glucose levels 30 minutes ahead of time in order to account for this. My research is to create this crucial glucose prediction algorithm. Because of all the factors affecting dosing, we need data from several sensors in order to capture all of the variability. So we've collaborated with the Mayo Clinic to collect data from nearly 150 patients. This data is then fed into my prediction algorithm, and the physics of insulin absorption and glucose metabolism are used to make glucose predictions. Machine learning is also utilized so that the historical trends can be accounted for. Somehow, after years of pulling out my hair, I'm now able to predict glucose levels up to 30 minutes in advance. These predictions can have tremendous effects on the 25 million people living worldwide with type 1 diabetes. And for the 200,000 children in this country alone that have type 1 diabetes that do not have the experience to dose correctly, this algorithm can really be a guardian angel for them. So one day in the future, my algorithm will seamlessly connect with an insulin pump. And on that day, we will have successfully engineered a replacement for the pancreas.
Come over here. So, well done. Thank you very much. So while the judges are, as I said, while the judges are tallying things, hopefully I'll be channeling some of the questions that I know that the folks in the audience have about your presentation, but also about the background. So you said that your pancreas failed in 2012.
Yes.
So I'm intrigued. You were probably already coming to Berkeley to do your graduate work, right?
I was. Yeah, I was actually between undergrad and grad school, and it was literally like 3 months before I got to Berkeley.
So did this change the course of your studies? I mean, you're in mechanical engineering, so presumably you already accepted a place in mechanical engineering. Did you know that this is what you were going to be doing, or did this really change your life in terms of your research life as well as your own health?
Well, so for my master's, I did work on something different, but I've been fortunate enough to work under Andrew Seri, and he was very open to me trying to work on something involving diabetes because he knows how important it is for me personally. So when I started my PhD work after getting my master's, I immediately switched to working on diabetes work, and I've been doing that for the past 3 years.
So what did you start doing? What did you think that you were going to be doing when you first came to Berkeley?
I thought that I was going to be working on breaking kidney stones, smashing kidney stones with shockwaves to break them into small pieces. Very exciting physical problem, but for me personally, it didn't really get my blood flowing. Yeah.
You've got to develop some kidney stones before you start doing
One day, well, I'll convert. I'll switch over to kidney stones when I'm like 50 or so, because that's probably imminent for me. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think that the audience should know, because I'm an engineer, I know this, is that, the field of mechanical engineering is just very diverse in its applications, as Spencer's work actually demonstrates. So the judges are still doing a little more of their own tallying. So let me ask you a couple more questions. Where did you do your undergraduate work?
The University of Central Florida.
Okay, so what brought you over to Berkeley?
It was a great school and a great place, and my parents actually moved to Seattle, so I was actually moving closer to them by coming here. So, I mean, all around it just seemed like a great place, and I think that it was probably the best decision that I ever made in my life. And to be quite honest, Andrew was very convincing when I spoke to him during visit day.
And what surprised you the most about Berkeley?
I think
you actually came here.
I think the level, like the expectation for the science that you're expected to be able to do here is much higher. I mean, I think that when you get to the graduate level classes, the bar is set really high. And when I came in, I was really low, and I've been working really hard just to get up to that level. And I think that being in a place that is constantly challenging me to think in new ways and to think very technically and to think very objectively has been probably the greatest asset of the university. Yeah.
Great. You're not the first graduate student to tell me that they thought that they were doing really well until they realized that Berkeley had reset the bar. Well, I think that the judges are ready now. So thank you very much again. And we now move to our second contender, Ari Frink, who is a second-year master's student in landscape architecture and environmental planning.
Yeah.
Ari.
In California, the way we manage flooding is facing a crisis. Our levees, dams, and flood control channels are growing older and weaker, threatening our homes and our lives. Governor Brown has promised to invest $400 million to address flooding statewide. This funding must be spent on new solutions and not on repeating past mistakes. My research is focused on one particular past mistake: our concrete flood control channels. These channels were built across the state, and they trapped free-flowing creeks and concrete channels. Even Strawberry Creek, which runs through campus, enters a channel just west of here. These channels provide very little habitat value and no public access. But what is most concerning is that these channels are nearing the end of their service lives. As we saw at Oroville Dam this past winter, just one intense storm can bring catastrophic flooding if the concrete channel fails. So, what are we going to do? We could just replace the concrete, but I think we deserve something more equitable and longer lasting. The goals of my research are to identify the best places to start removing the concrete, and then create visions of what the channel could look like if it reflected our current values for our waterways. What do you want from your local creek? I've used Grayson Creek in Contra Costa County, just 7 miles east of here, as my study site. Grayson has over 3 miles of concrete-lined channels, but the flood control district in charge of Grayson is forward-thinking and has even passed policy supportive of removing the concrete. They don't know how to get there, but that's where my research comes in. Excuse me. I've identified, first, the benefits that a creek can provide. For example, a creek can infiltrate groundwater. It can be a public park space. But what is most important is that when a creek is truly connected to its floodplain, it can provide better habitat and better flood protection. I've used these and other benefits to guide my recommendations. For example, there are multiple schools located along the concrete channel. We should start channel restoration here, building outdoor classrooms and removing the channel and building a wider floodplain. This can provide hands-on educational experiences for students, while also increasing flood protection. My analysis also revealed multiple neighborhoods disconnected from services by the concrete channel. Any restoration done in these neighborhoods should include a trail system to better connect residents. We deserve so much more from these channels, and I hope my research helps the communities move beyond the concrete.
Well, thank you, Ari. That was fascinating. How did you get interested in creek restoration, and presumably there are other kinds of things that could be restored as well?
Yeah, I grew up playing along creeks and watching salmon spawn around Sacramento, and so that kind of led me to be interested in this work.
So do you have a vision, how does your vision kind of extend, say, to the levee system in the Delta?
Yeah.
I know sort of in the last few months going up to Sacramento, there's been an awful lot of flooding around there. So you probably did see quite a lot of flooding.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think wherever possible, setting back levees to create more space for wildlife and more space for floodwaters is really the best way forward. That's tricky in many places, but I think that's really the place we should be moving towards.
And in areas that are more kind of agricultural, can this concept of restoration be applied for agricultural purposes? I mean, is the flooding, if the floodplain is wide enough, is it going to damage agricultural land, or is it actually beneficial?
I think it depends on the types of crops, but there definitely are places where the Yolo Bypass is a great example of a place where rice can be farmed and grown, while at the same time it provides more space for floodwaters.
Great. We know that you grew up in Sacramento. Where did you do your undergraduate work?
Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington.
Oh, okay. I actually know somebody who went there in addition to you.
Small school. I know.
Yes, you might actually. I won't name names here, just to protect the innocent. That's very small. What attracted you to Berkeley then for your graduate work?
The professor that I've been working with on these programs, he had the projects that sounded very interesting to me, and I also before this had worked for the water utility in San Francisco, and their work with stormwater really interested me. A lot of the people there had gone through this program, so it seemed like a good fit.
And a question that some of the contestants might get, so you're the first to get this question, is if you can cast your mind back to when you were in 3rd grade, I don't want to put graduate students on the spot by asking them now what they want to do when they grow up, because this is a bit too close. But when you were in the 3rd grade, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I loved reading books when I was in 3rd grade, and had great teachers that really inspired me to write a lot. And and I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write, novels and all that stuff.
It sounds like your career aspirations have changed a little.
Yeah, well,
This happens. Well, the judges are ready, so thank you very much.
thank you. Mhm.
So our third contestant is Kelly Swanson, and while she gets equipped with the mic, I can let you know that she is a fourth-year PhD student in physics. So we'll hear from her. The timer will start as soon as she's ready. Kelly.
Everything we see, the Earth, the planets, the stars, these make up only 5% of the universe. What is the other 95%? We don't actually know. Of the matter that we can see, what is it made out of? Are the smallest constituents tiny point-like particles? Or are they, as some people believe, vibrating strings? And when these particles move, do they move in the 3 dimensions that we are familiar with? Or are there other dimensions that they can access? The Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, is the world's largest particle accelerator, and it was designed to answer these questions. It is a large ring inside which 2 beams of protons are accelerated and collide at nearly the speed of light. Out of this collision comes a whole slew of new particles that we can then study for signs of new physics. While these machines have been instrumental in answering questions about our universe for decades, they are becoming prohibitively large and expensive. The LHC is 17 miles around and costs billions of dollars to construct. But we want to continue to probe such questions, but we need a fundamental revision in the way that these experiments are performed. And this is where I come in. My research aims to make such experiments more accessible by developing a tabletop-sized particle accelerator. In my lab, we take a laser pulse with the power equivalent to 1 billion light bulbs, and we shoot it into a very tiny thread of plasma. The force of this laser hitting the plasma creates a wave inside the plasma, and particles can then surf this wave to higher speeds. This is what we call laser plasma acceleration. This is what one of our structures looks like. It confines the plasma and it guides the laser. It is only 3.5 inches in length. It can accelerate particles up to speeds that would require over 500 feet using LHC technology. Now, there are limits to what a single structure can achieve. Any high-energy accelerator requires hundreds of these to be staged, such that the particles that are accelerated in one stage are injected and then further accelerated in a second. Now, this is incredibly difficult, as it requires precise control over both the laser and the plasma dynamics. The second stage must catch the particles from the first with precision less than the width of a human hair, and everything must be timed to within a quadrillionth of a second. Now, I know this sounds really difficult, but we have actually just accomplished this. We have recently staged 2 laser plasma accelerators, and the entire setup fits in the palm of my hand. Now, 2 laser plasma accelerators are not enough, but we do believe that our research will allow us to really discover what the universe is made out of using a system that is small enough to fit on top of a table.
We'll give that back. So, what got you interested in physics?
I was a big science fiction reader when I was little.
Yes.
I was like, oh, these things are so cool. Can I actually build them myself? So,
Oh, this is such an ambitious project. It's sort of, who's kind of behind this vision? And were you skeptical about the ability of this to actually work?
So my PI, Win Lemius, is here. He's definitely a big driver for this research. I'm definitely an optimist, pretty much everything, so I have total faith in my research.
That's the way to do it. I'll note for the benefit of the audience that something that you said about it's really hard to do this, but we'll do it. And I think that reflects the attitude that an awful lot of Berkeley graduate students have. They enjoy hard problems. because it's so satisfying to actually solve them. When you're doing these experiments and your particles are becoming very energetic, do you have to take significant, are they dangerous? Are there radiation effects and things that really you've got to do an awful lot to safeguard against?
Yeah, we're very careful about that sort of thing.
I'm sure you are, yes.
Yeah.
But I want the audience to hear.
Yeah, so like for example, when we're doing these experiments, we don't actually stay near the experiment. Everything's remotely controlled, so we're quite far away from any radiation produced. So there's no concern.
So these are only going on the palm of your hand when they're dead.
For demonstration purposes, we don't actually perform the experiments on my hand.
Good. Pleased to hear that. And could you say a thing or two about the impact that this miniaturization will have on costs for doing experiments?
Yeah, so these devices make everything up to 1,000 times smaller. So any sort of accelerator that produces radiation can then be much, much smaller. So for example, a lot of medical devices will use radiation for like cancer treatments and things like that. So we can make them a lot smaller and therefore a lot cheaper. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I think that the judges are ready now. So thank you very much. It's the time to start. So now I'm pleased to welcome our fourth contestant, Pierce Gordon. Pierce is a fifth-year PhD student in energy and resources. Pierce.
Look at my wheelchair. It's nice, isn't it? Well, I'm proud of it, specifically because of what it represents. 4 long weeks of developing low-cost mobility solutions for those that live in the Kalahari Desert. And this wheelchair, check it out, is designed to decrease the amount of energy per stroke you use it when compared to existing wheelchairs. And stop. Take this story, remember it. This time I'm going to tell another one about the man in the wheelchair. This is Jephthah. He lives in the Kalahari Desert, and because he's paraplegic, he hasn't been to school in a very long time. While developing this project, he taught us the importance of his independence. This community, his community, was critically important to develop a wheelchair he could push himself. And stop. Did you notice the difference? The first story committed the cardinal sin of an innovation story, the focus on the product instead of the person. You in the audience get a chance to see that fancy prototype, but not the complex process which led to it as a solution. And this is why I got interested in innovation practice for global poverty issues. Specifically, are we doing it the way that we should? So you might ask me, Pierce, why the process? Because how we innovate and who gets to innovate impacts what we make. Hands up, who's heard of the One Laptop Per Child project? Thank you. It's pretty famous, kind of. It was developed to create low-cost, durable laptop for kids all over the world to help with their education. But when implementing it, a whole bunch of questions emerged that people did not expect. For instance, how do we repair these laptops in all of these places? And does it work the way that we should? Now, these questions are very difficult to answer in any context, so what I focus on is supporting the innovators during this complex process. I do this through ethnographic studies of innovation ecosystems, specifically like Jephthah's, and how outside designers can support their activities. I also investigate how designers are actually designing across geographic and disciplinary context. One finding is that much of design is remote design, where Western communities inadvertently exclude the communities that they try to help from design decisions. So Pierce, yes, how do you make sure that this work has an impact? I do it by telling these stories to make a case for putting innovation methods in the hands of everyone. It doesn't matter if you're doing wheelchair work in Botswana or innovation sprints here at Berkeley. I know that everyone in this room can use these methods to make lives better. But like my colleagues taught me, if you're going to do it right, You must do it together. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
So you can relax now.
A little bit.
You've done it.
I want to stay up for them.
I didn't say to speak. I just said
Yes.
relax.
I'll do my best.
You'd actually be more receptive.
Thank you.
That was very inspiring.
I try.
We got that. How did you get interested in this field of work?
It happened here.
It brings together so many different areas of scholarship.
That is design research.
Yes.
That is my field.
And so how did you get engaged in it?
I found it here at Berkeley. I was in a dual degree engineering program at Morehouse in Michigan, where I got applied physics and aerospace engineering.
Yes.
And I said I hated all of it. It's necessary for many people, but I realized I needed my work to have a soul. And in my work, I came into Berkeley trying to look for ways to investigate international development. And I wanted to look at a field that cross-cut many different sectors of international development, like health and energy and gender issues and all different things. Everyone talks about innovation. The question is how to do it right.
Yes.
So I wanted to figure out different ways that people actually innovate and how I can help them.
So you said you found it at Berkeley.
Yeah.
I presume that you looked at various other schools to see whether they would offer you something.
You're funny. Did. I actually got in some.
Yeah, I'm trying to size up the competition.
Aren't you? I did get in some. I'm here. I assume it's because you want to ask why I'm here. Is that why?
Well, like I said, I like to size up the competition.
Okay.
I'm interested in the design field myself.
Absolutely. I'm here because of freedom. I found the Energy and Resources Group. What we focus on is interdisciplinarity towards a wide variety of resource issues. Mine was all the ways to interpret and deal with global poverty. We have anthropologists, econometricians, engineers, and making sure that I had the freedom to combine the way that needed to be done. Brought me here to do a very weird PhD.
You're probably not the only person in the room who either did a weird PhD or is it currently engaged in one.
What is it, Berkeley? Keep things weird. If you want, it's how you feel.
So where did you grow up?
Maryland. Advocate City, Maryland. On the East Coast. A nice place. Wonderful family environment. I always had the experience of being the token black guy in many of my experiences, either AP classes or gifted and talented classes. And I've been propelled mainly by my mother and father, who showed me the way. But from there, I just learned I was great at school, and I want to use it to help anyone who deserves, which is everyone.
Well, thank you so much. I think the judges are ready. So
Thank you.
You can really
Thank you very much.
So next, I welcome Stephanie Mack. Stephanie is a fourth-year PhD student in physics. Stephanie.
Would you rather have a bunch of diamonds or a handful of graphite pencils? Well, maybe I'm just easy to please, because I know diamonds are supposed to be a girl's best friend, but I'd be okay with either. Even though they look really different, they write really differently, and they sure cost very different amounts. They're both made out of carbon. Carbon can form the graphite, and as you increase the pressure and squeeze it enough, it'll turn into diamond. This is an example of what we call a phase transition, and last year's Nobel Prize in Physics went to 3 physicists for predicting a very special type of phase transition called a topological phase transition. To a physicist, topological means when the outside or surface of a material is different than the inside. So imagine you're holding a chunk of something in your hand, and on the inside it's an insulator. The electrons are held in place and can't move around very easily. But on the outside, or surface, the electrons are free to move around like cars on a racetrack and conduct electricity like metal. And just like those race cars, they're going a lot faster than normal traffic. So even though it's the same material throughout, the outside is different than the inside. And that's what we mean when we say topological. So ever since this prediction, people have been trying to find all of the materials we know that display this topological property. The conventional wisdom has been that you need complicated materials for this to happen. So what most people do is look at combinations of the heavy elements on the bottom half of the periodic table. What I did was take a counterintuitive approach and try to find the most basic material that still displays this unique topological property. So what I did was take the simplest example of a metal on the periodic table, which is element 3, lithium, and study that using mathematical models to predict its properties. What I found is that under pressure, the same way that carbon underwent a phase transition from graphite to diamond, lithium also undergoes a phase transition. But on top of that, it's a topological phase transition, going from being a normal metal, arguably boring like graphite, and as you increase the pressure and squeeze it, it becomes topological, where the electrons are freer on the surface than they are on the inside. So this is really exciting, because not only does it give us an entirely new section of the periodic table to look for these topological materials, but it's also this idea of using pressure as a switch to turn on and off this topological property. And this should inspire us to switch our thinking when we're designing future devices and technologies to harness the potential of these topological materials. And so imagine if your silicon-based computers of today could operate 100 times faster using topological materials. This is the kind of thinking that gets us from this being a really cool concept from a theoretical perspective to something useful for the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you.
You can breathe. Right. So how did you get interested in these topological materials?
Well, to be honest, when I started my PhD, I was doing a completely different project. And then
this sometimes happens. So tell us what you started off with.
So initially, I was looking at these layered materials and trying to tune different properties of these layered materials, which has applications for solar cells, and that's still going on in the background. But then, I was always curious about these topological materials because I had heard about them as an undergrad, just through conversation with some people, and so it was always in the back of my head that this was something I was very curious about. And then just through conversations within my research group, we kind of fell upon this idea of looking for these really simple materials and trying to find this topological property in perhaps unconventional systems, and so it's taken off since.
So this demonstrates something. I'm always pleased when people kind of bear out some of my long-held beliefs, and I always tell students to work in areas that they feel passionate about, because then they're going to be the best that they possibly can be, and you're obviously very interested in this. So are there a lot of people kind of looking around for these materials, and were you kind of just lucky to find lithium?
Well, so it definitely is a really popular field, which I think is also exemplified by the fact that it did get the Nobel Prize last year.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work by both theorists and experimentalists. And so I think what's really nice is that as a theorist, we're able to guide perhaps or propose more ideas for materials for the experimentalists to look for. And so there was a definite thought process to get us to lithium, but yeah, it was definitely an interesting route.
And are people looking at alloys, which for the non-materials people in the audience are mixtures of different metals?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the materials that, well, there haven't been that many materials that have been definitively confirmed to be topological, but a lot of people look at, like I was saying, these transition metals and combinations of those elements.
Okay. So I think that the judges are ready.
All right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our next contestant proves that the order is random, because we have another physicist, and we would not have done that by anything other than random design. So I'm very pleased to welcome Claire Thomas, who is in her 7th year doing a PhD in physics.
Hi, I'm Claire Thomas, and today I'd like to share with you some of the enthusiasm and excitement that I have whenever I use my phone. I'd also hope to share with you some of the enthusiasm I have about the technologies of the future. I think it's easy to forget or not realize how many different kinds of materials are working together just to let you send a text message. The materials that are inside your phone are governed by the laws of quantum mechanics. That's why we're able to use them to make our phones and all of our devices. The laws of quantum mechanics tell us that how a material is going to work is less about the building blocks that that material is made of, and more about the way that those building blocks are arranged. You can imagine building a castle out of Legos. You could stack your Legos one on top of the other to make a wall. Or you could stagger your Legos. Now, you know that your staggered Lego wall is going to be stronger if something runs into your Lego castle later. Materials are similar. The way a material is going to work is determined by how the atoms are arranged. So the building blocks aren't Legos, they're atoms. But the way those atoms are arranged is going to tell you what sort of properties that material has. In my lab, we try to emulate materials that we don't really understand. The materials in your phone, we understand. But there are plenty that we don't. So we artificially put different atoms in different crystal structures and try to understand what sort of material properties a material in that structure would have. To do this, we have to start by cooling atoms down to about 1/1000th of a degree above absolute zero. That's really cold. And down at those really low temperatures, the quantum mechanics becomes really important. So quantum mechanics, which usually governs the physics of the very small, becomes really big. At that point, we overlay an interference pattern of many lasers. It takes about 10 lasers overlapped at a 10 micron spot size in order to make the artificial materials that we build. With these, we can learn what sort of properties a material like that would have. This sort of physics is called quantum simulation, and it paves the way for quantum computing. My PhD has been about building those laser systems to do that overlap and doing quantum simulations with these artificial materials. The materials that we simulate aren't real, but this paves the way to build the quantum computer. After I graduate, I've decided to go on and try to actually build a quantum computer at a small company. There, we'd like to revolutionize the way computation works. It won't just be an update to your phone. It'll change completely the way we think about computers and use them. So I hope I've expressed to you some of the enthusiasm that I have when I look at the technology that we use every day. And I hope you're a little bit excited about the technology of the future. Thanks. Stand out of the
you don't want to be blind.
I'd rather not over there.
Is it really? Oh, actually, it's hot everywhere. I think they're finally turned the heating on in this building and they're stuck on controlling it. So this is very interesting. I'd like to pick up on one of the things that you said, which is that you want to start your own company.
Joining a
small company.
Yes.
So who is investing in quantum computing? And kind of what can we envisage as developments in quantum computing in, say, the next 10 years? Because it's over 10 years since I heard about it. I haven't seen anything.
It's true. It's fair. So funding is obviously an issue that's really important in science, and the materials and computers that we make, I believe, should be funded in a variety of different ways. Our research is largely government funded, but the company that I'll be working for, and actually a lot of companies that are investing right now in quantum computers are private companies. I think it's because they recognize the potential of the devices, and I think that people really who are active in the field believe that we'll be able to make a quantum computer, a small-scale quantum computer. So we won't be like breaking all the encryption. It's not that kind of computer, but it's a small one that can do sort of chemistry simulations and simulations like the ones that I've talked about. And I think that we expect that in the next 5 years. So there are actually a lot of like venture capital investments. Google and IBM are both sort of competing with this small startup that I've decided to join. I think there are advantages to like having the mobility that a startup has. So, yeah, so there's the company that I'm working for just actually got a huge amount of venture cap.
Excellent. Cool. That's wonderful. So what drew you to this field? Sometimes people have quirky stories associated
Yeah,
with getting
absolutely. I wanted to do math growing up. I thought that was going to be my direction.
That's what you wanted to do when you were a third grader?
Well, when I was a third grader, I wanted to be an astronaut because we had astronauts visit our school, and there was a woman, and that was a huge deal to me. But later, I wanted to be a mathematician, and only in college, I gravitated slowly towards the more applied. I think when I was younger, I was like, oh, just this esoteric math, just theory. And then slowly, I sort of recognized the power of being able to make something with my hands.
Change the world.
And hopefully change how things go.
Yes. Well, I think the judges are ready, so thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
So we now move to our seventh contestant, who's just getting mic'd up, and she's Joan Dudney. She's a fourth-year PhD student in environmental science policy and management, which everybody at Berkeley refers to as ESPM. So, Joan.
Good afternoon. You've all heard of Christopher Columbus and Hernan Cortez. Today, I'd like to tell you about a colonizer that you've probably never heard of, but I argue is equally, if not more impressive. White pine blister rust. It's an invasive tree disease from northern Asia, and it's a part of a deadly movement of non-human species that are traveling the world. These invasive species don't have to return home to tell tales of wealth and treasures afar. They simply land and begin spreading at alarming speeds, making them one of the greatest threats to natural diversity worldwide. Blister rust is no different. It has traveled across 3 continents and is killing nearly 100% of all the young trees when it infects. It arrived in 1910 on the East Coast, and it accomplished a full takeover of Western North America by the 1960s. To put this into perspective, it took Westerners 400 years to accomplish the same feat, while blister rust did it in just 50 years. By most standards, that is impressive. Although blister rust spread quickly through the West, for some unknown reason, it didn't make it into the high southern Sierra Nevada. Hoping to uncover why, I spent the last 3 years leading expeditions into remote areas of wilderness where we carefully surveyed nearly 6,000 trees. What we found alarmed us. Blister rust had indeed spread. Where it had never been discovered before, we now found it in 11% of our high elevation pines. This is a deadly spread for whitebark pine, these incredible trees that sustain the health of our high elevation systems. Recently, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife asked for my data because it provides critical information to helpless whitebark as an endangered species. It also lays the foundation for management moving forward. Historically, we've considered wilderness off limits to most active management. However, the harmful effects of invasive species don't stop at the gates to national parks like Yosemite or Sequoia Kings Canyon. Action on the ground is likely needed if we want these incredible pines to persist in the future. Blister rust reminds us that today there is a new class of colonizer. Let's not condone their legacies echoing that of Hernan Cortez and Christopher Columbus, who eradicated great societies in their wake. I dare us to start asking the hard questions about our wilderness to turn this story into one of inspiration and hope. What do we want our wilderness to look like in the future, and how far will we go to save a dying species? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan. So I'm going to ask how you got interested in this. Did you get interested in it from the sort of colonizer perspective, or did you start off being passionate about the wilderness?
No, actually I started in grasslands, which have primarily been converted to European grasslands in California.
Yes.
So I saw sort of that rapid transformation in lowlands. And I would go out into the Sierras and I would see that most of it was still relatively pristine. We had very few invasive species. And I was like, this is the place we need to save. So I spent a lot of time hiking out and trying to come up with some interesting questions. And I found blistergrass, which was perfect.
So how would you actually go about stopping the spread of an invasive species in the wilderness? Would you advocate, for example, requiring hikers to clean off their boots, disinfect boots and clothing before they go into the wilderness? Or how do you act? Or is it, for example, spread by birds or animals that move around and carry
Unfortunately, it's
spores?
airborne.
It's airborne.
It's airborne, yes. Humans, the only fault we have was we brought it over here in 1910. But after that, it was the fungus that really started reproducing and spreading everywhere. So a lot of times what they do is they prune infected branches. But unfortunately for this disease, it's mostly rust resistance that they're looking for. And so we would actually go out and plant the rust resistant individual trees. So there's not a lot we can do to stop it from killing trees, but we can plant a new population.
When you started your studies in the Southern Sierra, were you hopeful that you actually had some biodiversity of a rust-resistant species there?
Yes, I was.
So
we do.
Disappointing?
No. We have a little bit. It's just a different species. But white bark, the story is not so great. But for foxtail pine, if any of you have seen foxtail, they're really iconic and cool. They seem to be resistant.
I see. Okay. Well, the judges are ready now, so thank you very much. And last but by no means least, I'm pleased to introduce our final contestant, Tim Day. Tim is a sixth-year PhD student in neuroscience. Tim.
Humans are visual creatures, and human vision is amazing. We can distinguish over 10,000 different hues of color. We have over 1 million nerve fibers that go from the back of our eye to our brain. And our cortex dedicates over 50% of its processing power to processing visual information. So saying that slowly going blind to a genetic eye disease is devastating is an understatement. But this is the case for hundreds of thousands of Americans. And this is caused by retinal cell death. So the retina is shown here in red, and these cells die over time because of mutations that these patients are carrying. And the retina is converting light into information that the brain can use, so it's critical. And when you carry these mutations, it can lead to cell death. Over time, you lose your entire vision. And for these patients, they have currently no therapeutic options. Until now, there's a new area of medicine called gene therapy. And gene therapy aims to replace the mutated copy of the gene with a healthy copy of the gene in the necessary cell types. And this is accomplished by using viruses. So we use viruses to deliver the necessary cells by swapping out the genes and then putting in the healthy copy of the necessary genes. So a large portion of my PhD was spent creating millions and millions of viral variants and undergoing this process called directed evolution. So we were inspired by nature to go through the iterative process to bring a virus that gives us new properties. And the amazing thing about this is we're able to take what normally takes nature millions of years onto the order of months in the lab. And then we turned to nature one more time, and we took an isolated gene from jellyfish that encodes for a glowing protein and used that to determine where our virus was able to deliver the necessary genes. And we injected this into a primate retina, shown here. Everywhere that's white shows where we were able to effectively deliver a healthy copy of the gene. And most importantly, we were able to hit this bullseye area, which encodes for the area of the retina called the fovea, which is necessary for high acuity daylight vision. So now we're on the cusp of being able to bring gene therapy to this patient population that previously had no therapeutic options. options. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this must be incredibly rewarding and exciting work.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting.
How did you get interested in this area?
I read a book called Virus Hunters of the CDC when I was in college, and it got me interested in viruses, and then I learned about how they could be used as delivery vehicles.
So what were you studying at that point?
Microbiology.
Okay, so you saw that you could really take what you were doing as an undergraduate and go in this direction.
Exactly.
Graduate work. So why did you decide to come to Berkeley to do this rather than other schools?
So,
I assume that other schools wanted you as well.
So, yes.
It's a pretty safe bet.
But yeah, so some of the best researchers in this field are here, and I was able to do an internship as an undergrad here at Berkeley, kind of test out the waters, test out the Berkeley, and saw that I liked it.
It was okay. You could handle it. So one question that really sort of hit me as you were speaking is when you start doing these mutations on viruses, are there safety issues associated with this? What precautions do you have to take as a researcher to make sure that you don't accidentally give everybody or yourself some genetic mutation that you really don't want?
Sure. So the nice thing is we use viruses that are non-pathogenic, and so there isn't really an issue of worrying about of delivering some disease to you. Yeah. But we wear lab coats, gloves, glasses, bleach.
Please hear it. Okay, well, I think that we're done now. I think the judges are done. So thank you very much. I'm going to tell everybody now. So as the judges retire, I would like to invite everybody to give another round of applause to our amazing contestants. So it's always really, really hard to choose winners in a competition like this where all of the contestants are so outstanding. Our judges are now growing up to do their hard work, but you also have to do that hard work because, as I mentioned initially, this year we are asking everybody to vote for a people's choice. And so at this point, I would like everybody to mark your ballots for which of these amazing 8 contestants you think just edged out the others. And our staff are going to be collecting your ballots. We've got refreshments outside, and we will reconvene in 30 minutes to actually hear the winners of the contest. So everybody gets a chance to vote, and then we can talk to the contestants, talk to each other. Okay, can you hear me? Is it streaming now? Okay, so for those who are listening remotely, let me repeat that the third place winner was Stephanie Mack. Hey. Again. Okay, our second place is Joan Dudley. Congratulations. And here we are. I'm very impressed that we've got these certificates done in real time for you. Yeah. Again, she wants a photograph. I do. Great. Congratulations. All right, and our first place winner, this is the person who will be representing Berkeley at the system-wide competition, Kelly Swanson. Okay, so... Do you want something spontaneous, Andy?
Camera. Okay, we'll use a different camera. One more. Thank you.
Congratulations. And so you also get it. Okay, congratulations. And now we'll see sort of whether or not the judges' judgment coincided with the audience. So we have the envelope for the people's choice. And the people's choice is Kelly Swanson. Congratulations. Congratulations. So I don't know how the judges did such a difficult job, because all of the presentations were just absolutely fantastic. I've been talking with people who've been at some of the previous ones, and I've heard from many people that even given the wonderful quality of previous years, that this year was really, really great. So I would like to thank sincerely all of the contestants. I'd also like to thank the audience. I know we've got faculty advisors here. We've got various other people who've worked in different ways to support our contestants. And I'd like to thank everybody for making this such a wonderful competition. So once more, congratulations to everybody. Thank you. So thank you.